What's your official title?
I'm the artistic director and the
He
executive.
is, in fact, the artistic director, and anything else you want to call him. He can make up his own titles as he wants. Doug Cox, performer, singer, songwriter, producer. Um, Although I don't think you're doing a lot of playing right now. Wait a minute. No, you did have a one off, didn't you? Just recently.
Yeah, I just did a tour with Linda McRae. We have a brand new CD out. So we just did, Linda lives in Nashville. So we have to plan things carefully, but we just did 2 weeks in BC and we had a great time.
And what is the name of that album, sir?
It's called Beyond the Great Pause.
You like to find yourself in the company of like-minded string individuals. I know you lean string, although you're a horn guy. You can tell from the booking, you like a little bit of everything. But you have a life on the same stage that they play, which makes your lineup infinitely different because you're coming from a different perspective, right?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, I spend the time I'm not working on the festival, I spend working as a producer and as a musician. And something I did consciously this year was I didn't go to any of the music conferences. And I tried very hard to book a non-showcase conference music festival because I'm finding that more and more of the festivals are usually ending up with very much of a similar lineup because they all go to the same places to book their festivals. And that's not the way it used to be. You know, I'm old enough, I could say that all the time now, I guess, but it used to be that you would kind of go off into the woods and explore music and discover musicians and find them and bring them to your festival. And frankly, that's a much more fun and interesting way to do it.
Doug, let me just tell folks we're talking about the Vancouver Island Music Festival, July 14 through 16. Vancouver Island Music Festival, the Friday, Saturday, and Sunday lineups are fantastic.
Thank
For
you.
example, the headliner on the Friday night is Sarah McLachlan. The headliner on Saturday is Rickie Lee Jones. And Sunday, it's the Brothers Landreth. And there's all of them have stories, fabulous stories. And then the surrounding players are just as good, just as engaging. But before we get to your lineup and your festival, right in front of us, two stories. The loss of Gordon Lightfoot. Did you cross paths? Did you share a stage with him?
I never did, and I regret that. But I did. The first songs I ever learned as a musician were Gordon Lightfoot songs, and they were taught to me by my older sister. And we would go camping, and two of my sisters played guitar, and we'd sit around and play Gordon Lightfoot songs. So he's in my DNA, you know, like so many Canadians. I never got to see him play. I never crossed paths with him, but I still felt this deep connection just because they were the first songs that I learned.
I was doing a conversation with Bruce Coburn and had to zoom him back and say, overnight we lost Gord. Just give me your thoughts on that. My last question was, do you think that Gord exemplified the sound of a country, the sound of Canada? Is it possible? And he gave me I've been editing it. It's a long answer, but basically he was saying, yes. And it comes because we didn't initially, as Canada opened up in those first 50 years, 60 years, 100 years, we didn't see ourselves as conquerors. We saw ourselves as part of the fabric of Canada, the natural wildlife around us. And I believe that we're not the conqueror. We saw ourselves as that. And that's what you're hearing in his music.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree with that completely. He's also was a surprisingly sophisticated songwriter. His chord progressions were really interesting.
Yeah.
The forms of his songs were really interesting. They weren't just verse, chorus, verse, chorus. They were all quite different. Like Bruce Coburn, actually. So you can see that perhaps as part of the Canadian songwriter history too. I mean, if you look at Joni and Neil, and we've got some pretty sophisticated writers.
Joni, Neil, yes, Leonard Cohen, all of that.
Yeah.
That's the first thing. The second thing is that on this very morning, it was announced that one of the greatest songwriters ever finally is inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, Willie Nelson, who just turned 90.
Oh, I didn't hear that. That's
How
incredible.
long it took? 20 years, too long to get to the songwriter, Willie Nelson.
Yeah. Yeah. It's fantastic. He deserves.
Alison Brock said on the weekend on CKUA, um, uh, oh man, it was, I'm sorry, it's gone now. It was, she was something about, if for no other reason, he should be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame for writing Crazy.
Absolutely. Yeah, he deserves every award you could possibly get in the music world. I think. And it's good. It's good that he's seeing that before he goes, right? Because he's 90 now.
Yeah.
One more thought about Gordon Lightfoot that I just noticed this morning that really struck me was Billy Joel was singing a Gordon Lightfoot song on Facebook this morning, just talking about how deeply he was affected by
Who was
Gordon
this?
Lightfoot. Billy Joel.
Oh, Billy Joel. Yes, I
And
saw that.
that struck me as like this guy reached everybody, you
Everybody.
know. That just really struck me as odd actually, but it just shows how many people he touched with his music, right? I mean, Tony Rice,
Sure.
as well. If you're a bluegrass fan, he just worshipped Gordon. So yeah, I mean, we're so lucky to have lived at this time when all the best of the best musicians were around, right? Pretty incredible.
So, Mr. Artistic Director, let's get to it. Vancouver Island Music Festival, Courtney Comox, July 14th through 16th. Some of the stages are so small. They're surrounded by a small cathedral of trees, just enough space for an audience and a stage, and then the boreal forest.
Yes.
It's phenomenal to see the artists that you see in settings like that, usually in songwriting circles and things. Friday, AV in the inner circle, AV being Anne Vreen, right?
Yeah, from Edmonton. Fabulous. I think I almost all woman 6-piece orchestra, but I think they're bringing a bass player with them maybe, and that's probably a guy.
To be followed by Nikki D and the Sisters of Thunder, all female, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, and Nikki D was here last year as part of the wonderful all women's blues review that Shakira Seata put together for us. Nikki D is the only female sacred steel slide guitar player that I'm aware of.
Wow.
And she's wonderful. Everybody at the festival fell in love with her last year. She's one of those people that just makes friends with everyone. So we thought we'd bring her back, and she's very excited to be opening.
And then, of course, we don't have to explain who Sarah McLachlan is. It's just that after that incredible, I saw the first steps. I did the first interview with her for Much Music, and I still have it. I play it once in a while. I ask her the question, what do you want to do? What is it that you want to do? You've moved from Halifax all the way to the other coast. I just want to write songs for people that they like. That was her opening statement. And so now Sarah McLachlan is a world famous name and has established herself as a force, as a voice. Which Sarah has Sarah got a new album coming? We got new music. What do you think?
Not that I'm aware of. She's coming to perform at the festival as a duo. So it's going to be her and a cello player, which is wonderful.
Yeah.
And she's going on early enough. She's playing at 8:30 on Friday night. She was kind enough and smart enough to recognize that because it's just the perfect time. It's twilight time for her to come out.
I noticed also that like Rickie Lee Jones and Brothers Landreth are not the last thing on stage. So you've thought this through.
Yeah, we always do it that way because we lose a good chunk of our audience for the last act.
Yeah.
We've had, like when Bonnie Raitt played the festival, she went on at 11. And we had quite a few angry patrons because they were ready for bed. So we've learned to put the headliner on and then have a dance party afterwards for the people that want to stick around. There's usually a few thousand that do, but it just works better, you know.
And following Sarah McLachlan are the brothers Blackburn. They're not called that, it's just Blackburn.
Yes. And for folks who don't know them, they are these are my words. They probably hate this, but they are Canada's Neville brothers, and they have a deep history in Canada because their family came to Ontario through the Underground Railway.
Yeah,
And their father is quite a famous musician in Toronto. And the brothers have gotten together with a couple of other musicians, and funk, blues, jazz, gospel, soul, like they
You know, I don't have to tell you this. You know that families, siblings make glorious harmony together. Well, you think about, of course, the Everly Brothers, but if you grow up together and you have that history as a family, it shows itself in the music. It's phenomenal.
Absolutely. And it's funny because on Saturday, opening up the evening stage is a duo called the Brother Brothers.
Yeah.
And they're identical twins from the United States. And the closest thing you can compare them to is the Everlys or the Louvin brothers.
Good.
Their brother harmony at Simon and Garfunkel, even though they weren't brothers, their harmony is just to die for. So they're another family group.
And then I hate to rush you along, but we just got to get through this incredible menu. My pal, I've known him a long time. We've both known him a long time. Roy Forbes, BIM, a fellow broadcaster on CKUA radio, and he's coming to do one of his special albums.
Yes, he's coming to perform the Thistles album, which I'm really excited about because I loved that record when it came out. It was as important as the Gordon Lightfoot stuff was to me, and I was so thrilled because I know Roy's been fighting back and forth between not wanting to be called BIM anymore and wanting to be considered to be contemporary. And when he agreed to do that one record for us on the main stage, I just thought that is so cool. I'm going to try and do that every year now with a classic album.
Very cool.
And then he'll do his other stuff too during the weekend. So he'll do his current things as well.
And Doug Cox, Vancouver Island Music Festival, July 14 through 16 in Courtney, Comox. Fantastic. The stages are phenomenal. The tents are phenomenal. The little cathedral stages in the forest are phenomenal. And then there's Rickie Lee Jones, who's totally phenomenal.
Yeah,
and
she's coming with a 7-piece band.
She seems to be in a good space, Doug, because she's come full circle to her original producer, of course, and has an album just came out.
Right, and she's coming with a 7-piece band, which I'm very excited about. So, I've been back to listening to her whole catalog of music, and I've always loved her music, and of course I loved her hit records, and then she kind of fell off a little bit, but every time I came across something it was like, wow, and if you go back and listen to her catalog, she's a heavy artist, and so I'm thrilled that she's coming to the festival this year. And there's going to be a little bit of a reunion. I doubt this will happen on stage, but folks perhaps don't realize that Daniel Lapp and Rick May, who both live in Victoria, were both in Rickie Lee's band at one point in time. And they're both going to be at the festival performing with other groups. So I think part of the reason she agreed to come was because she just wanted to see those guys.
Wow, nice.
But who knows what that'll lead to.
I'm thrilled to see Daniel Lapp on stage anywhere, anytime, any place. He is one of my go-to guys musically. I really love what he does, and I follow him religiously. So let me see. So Rickie Lee Jones with a 7-piece band outside in the summer. Then Dave Alvin and Jimmy Dale Gilmore with the Guilty Ones. There is a package.
Yeah. I mean, if you don't know them, you should. And again, I'm just really excited that they're coming. I mean, that's just stellar. We've never had Dave Alvin at the festival.
And Allison and I, when we fundraised for CKUA, the one record we always play is Dave Alvin, Highway 61. It's right. a wicked shuffle, and a great reworking of a Dylan song. And Jimmy Dale Gilmore, we know as being one of the great Texas troubadours and songwriters.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, and they've done at least one record together that's really great too.
Galactic out of New Orleans. Thank you for doing that.
Yeah.
That's the end of night.
That is the jam band, the funk band out of New Orleans, featuring Stanton Moore, who is easily one of the world's greatest drummers. Most drummers worship Stanton and what he does.
If you're doing New Orleans music, you better have a drummer.
Yeah, absolutely.
Who knows what they're doing? That's beautiful. That's a beautiful Saturday night. Fantastic. Sunday, Jack Semple Band. Angelique Francis, is she bringing her family with her?
Yes, she is. Yeah.
Thank you.
So
Because
her dad and her
the horn
sisters.
sections are her sister.
Yeah. And her dad plays drums.
Drums, yeah, and writes the
Yeah.
tunes with her.
Yeah.
She
And she's
she
never
was on
been
our,
out this way before either. So it's going to be a real discovery for people.
yeah.
You know?
Well, we and she plays a wicked stand-up bass. Um, and she was on our Juno couch this year in Edmonton, and it was fabulous. It was really good. And then you finish with then the Brothers Landreth, which is a story in itself. Look at this story. I've been following those guys. I saw them at the Edmonton Folk Fest, and I turned and I went, "It's Little Feat. It's Little Feat."
Yeah.
And as it turns out, after interviewing them, that's what they were listening to at home with their dad Wally and Bonnie Raitt and all that stuff. So then they meet Bonnie at the Winnipeg Folk Festival. They're not sharing the same stage, but she likes what she hears on that stage. And she goes to them and says, "If you have any tunes, send them my way." It took 7 years before the brothers had a song that they felt was worthy of Bonnie Raitt and made up mind. They sent it to her. 2 years passed. And then they get a phone call from buddies in, I think it was in Nashville, saying, "We actually are playing one of your songs in the studio today. We're recording it with Bonnie Raitt, made up mind." And then they got another phone call saying, "And it's the first single off her new album."
Right.
And then, of course, she won the 3 Grammys, one for that song. And then the Byron Bay Festival, and she thanked them, of course, on stage, on camera. And then they meet at the Byron Bay Festival in Australia. They go on the Saturday. She comes on the Sunday. They stick around and go on stage with him.
Oh yeah, yeah.
All of
Yeah.
that history going to show up with the Brothers Landreth on your stage.
Yeah. And they've kind of been one of our house bands. Like they've played our main stage. This will be their 4th time, I think, on the main stage. And they are true musicians and true brothers. One of the things I love about them, I just got a text from Dave Landreth, who's the bass player.
Yeah.
And singer. And usually I get a text from artists and it starts off as conversation and then it gets to the point of whatever they want. Dave's asking me if I've heard the new Dr. John record. And that's all he wanted to talk about. And I really appreciate that because like you, I'm a total music geek and it's really nice to just talk musician to musician like that, especially with a band who I admire so much. That they are truly one of Canada's finest bands.
Now, here's where I'll step aside for a second. Those are just what came on this one sheet. But
yes,
other artists playing. Give me half a dozen quick sketches of 6 artists that we can also expect to see.
Okay, well, I want to mention closing the festival, Curtis Clear Sky and the Constellations, who are a wonderful Indigenous funk band from British Columbia. Oh boy, where do we start? There's a really great classical jam band called the Warp Trio coming from New York. They're a multicultural group, and they can play that crap out of anything that's classical, but they also are real jammers. So I'm really excited about that one. That's going to be a group that people will discover for sure for the first time. I already mentioned the Brothers. If you're into old time music, we've got 15-year-old prodigy Nora Brown coming from New York, who is just a fabulous old time banjo player. Dongyang Gazupa with Mei Han are coming from Korea, and they call themselves a heavy metal band, but they have like a hammer dulcimer player, and she's one of the best you've ever seen. So I don't know if it's heavy metal or not.
How about Burnstick?
Burnstick, of course, Jason from Manitoba, who's a fantastic slide player with his wife, and they do sort of singer-songwriter slidey stuff, which, as far as I'm concerned, is really as good as it gets. Sprig of That is a really interesting group from Portland, Oregon. They have the only female tabla player that I've ever seen.
Okay.
It's guitar and fiddle and tabla. And they're one of those sort of new music groups that actually really truly works, you know.
I have one more for you. Liam Doherty.
Yes, Liam. He's a
child. How old is he now?
He's 17 now. And his new record, I got to produce his new record, and it's coming out, and it's just going to kill people. He's playing lead blues guitar as good as anyone I've ever heard in Canada. And he's also a great songwriter. So it's kind of like Nick Drake meets the blues, if you could imagine. And his voice has changed now. So the first album we did together, his voice hadn't even changed yet. And then he made that record, won a bunch of awards, and then his voice changed about 2 months later. So the record became completely defunct, you know. So this new one's coming out in June, and it's just going to floor people. And I'm thrilled he's coming with his band.
And our last geek out is Daniel Lap Electro. They've been there before. Daniel's known for, of course, great fiddle playing, and his trumpet work, usually sitting in like with 5440, etc., whatever. But this is a band. What are they doing?
Well, this is a band that played together in Victoria 25 or 30 years ago. Rick May is the bass player as well. They're kind of like pre-hip hop, but they are actually hip hop meets jazz. And Daniel mostly plays the trumpet in that band. So it's trumpet, bass, I think percussion and keyboards. And it's sort of jammy, acid, jazzy, hip hop kind of stuff.
Okay.
They were a real popular band back in their day in Victoria. They used to play Steamers once a week, and they used to play Spinnakers, and they used to play all over the place. They got back together to play Rifflandia in Victoria last year.
Yeah, sure.
And then decided they want to do more things. So we're thrilled to have.
What night's he playing? Do we know?
Sorry. I don't
never
know.
mind. Never mind. It's okay. Sorry. We shouldn't not talk about Jack Semple simply because maybe we start to take him for granted because he has been so good for so long.
Yes. Last year, Jack played our festival, but he only played acoustically.
Yeah.
And then I saw him at the Toronto Blues Summit last year with his electric band, and it just reminded me he is Canada's Jeff Beck. Like he does things on the guitar that nobody else can do, and he's as good as anybody. Probably hasn't gotten his due because he's from Saskatchewan. So if he moved to the States, he'd probably be really well known these days. But yeah, one of the best guitar players around for sure.
So here's the big deal, Mr. Creative Director, Artistic Director. Tickets. How hard do we have to push, or does it sell out on its own?
Well, that's a hard one. It's different every year. We are anticipating a sellout this year, but there's still tickets right now, and you can get them at islandmusicfest.com. And day passes, I think, are about to go on sale. We have a very limited number of day passes as well within the next week or so.
Sure.
We have 10,000 people a day that come when we're sold out. So it's a small town, big sized festival basically. And we try to keep it limited to that because it's comfortable for everybody. And that's a real important part of our festival too. We are definitely a family festival. We want people to feel very safe, and they do at our festival. And we don't want that to change. So we're not going to let it grow any bigger than that for sure.
I think the key to it, besides Courtney Comox and the trees and the staging, is you and your booking. I'm fascinated. I always want to know what you're up to. Now we know. Details again at islandmusicfest.com.
You got it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Barry.
Thank you, Doug.